Welcome to the video guide for Lilith's Encroaching Shadow Legend, the first Legend Sinister Dominion fight released as part of patch 2.13.0 of Dragalia Lost. While there's no berserk mechanic like we've come to expect, Legend Lilith flips the existing team change mechanic on its head, starting us on the water element before switching to light for the second half. As always, my name is Xenozealous, and let's get straight to it. Lilith's abilities haven't changed from Master, so it's mostly a handful of new tricky mechanics to deal with, and some minor changes to old ones. As with all newer endgame fights, certain mechanics will be skipped or repeated based on boss, HP, and phase progression, so don't rely too much on the ordering mechanics appear in this guide. Lilith opens the fight by applying sugar-coated sadism before buffing her defense. As opposed to her stacking strength buffs like previous difficulties, Lilith now periodically buffs her defense by 50%. This takes 2 dispels to remove in solo, or 5 dispels to remove in co-op. Cheap dispel skill shares such as Lapis and Dragon Your Victor will be useful here. You might be tempted to use Halloween Laxie's skill share here for the Affliction too, but be wary of driving Lilith's flashburn resistance up before the light half of the fight. There's a pretty long tail just before she applies this buff. Lilith will stand still and dab for about 3 to 5 seconds. This can be a bit hard to see with effects enabled, so listening for a voice line about her taking things seriously is another tell. If your sound is off as well, then I can't help you there. Sorry. Ideally, you should get a feel for the timings by repeating the fight and getting more practice in. The next mechanic seeing a slight change is Candy Shower. The AoE puddles are now slightly larger, with a radius just beyond the distance covered by a single roll. Note that with good timing it's still possible to stack the last 2 bombs on top of each other. As before, all players in co-op are targeted with these, so be wary of trapping other players. Next is a new mechanic, Saccharine Stun. This will present 3 purple AoE patterns made up of cones, squares, and circles. The cones leave a safe spot under the boss in the middle, whereas the squares and circles leave safe spots on the outside. You need to memorize the order in which these AoEs appear in order to solve the next mechanic, Caramelized Sweets. Lilith drops 3 candies on the field, a ball, a cube, and a pyramid. Destroy these in the order corresponding to the purple AoEs in Saccharine Stun, matching the circle to the ball, cones to the pyramid, and squares to the cube. These are easy enough to destroy with just standard attacks, though the more stylish among you can try to line them up to pop 2 in a row with a well-aimed skill. Your AI in solo will do little to help you here even if you turn on auto, so be sure to remember the previous shapes. Your player-controlled adventurer is the only one capable of landing the final hit on the candies. In co-op, one strategy to improve DPS is to assign candy duty to one player. This player will clear the candies while allowing the other players to keep attacking Lilith for better uptime. Lilith is stationary before this mechanic is resolved, and the time is pretty forgiving, allowing for a good 10 or so seconds of sandbag DPS. Just be wary of clipping the candies with skills and accidentally popping the wrong one, so watch positioning and hug Lilith if you're on DPS duty. The next mechanic seeing a slight change is Accursed Shackles. While this still applies curse mobility as before, it's followed up by a room-wide purple AoE that hits for a moderate amount of damage. There's no special effects, but it'll punish you if you fail to heal adequately beforehand or if you've eaten a few too many attacks. After a few familiar mechanics, you'll be introduced to Sugary Surge. Lilith leaves the arena and drops 7 staves with red arrows. After a few seconds, the arena will explode with a safe spot under the staff without a red arrow pointing towards it. It can take some time to get used to this mechanic, but Twitter user Hamitar60 has a tweet with some diagrams to help you identify the 4 potential patterns. Generally, there will be a cluster of 3 arrows that point roughly towards the center of the arena. The safe spot will be under the middle of these 3 arrows. It's not a concrete rule, but it'll help you get started with recognizing the potential patterns. Getting hit by this AoE isn't lethal, but it'll inflict a lengthy 50% strength debuff. It's also non-lethal in co-op, but the DPS check in co-op is tight enough that a DPS unit getting hit by this is grounds for a retry regardless. This debuff can be removed by transforming into a dragon, but dragon gauge can be precious. Best not to get hit in the first place. That covers it for the first half of the fight. After hitting 50% hit points, Lilith will swap to the light half. Lilith kicks straight into Corrosion and Candy Shower, meaning that you'll want a healer with heals ready for the immediate start of the phase in order to handle Corrosion. The light half of the fight only introduces one new mechanic, Sticky Spinners. Lilith will fire out 3 spinning projectiles. Remember the order they come out, as they'll soon stop and then begin to explode with untelegraphed donut-shaped AoEs, leaving only a small safe spot under each of them. The timing for this is pretty tight, you'll need to dodge between the donuts almost as soon as the AoEs disappear. Failing this mechanic is straight up lethal, so be on your toes. There's a window of time for free damage before the 3rd projectile is fired, so pushing for more damage here is an option. And that's about it in terms of mechanics for the Legend Lilith fight. I found the trickiest mechanic was Sugary Surge with the stabs and arrows, which comes down to practice, and probably not attempting the fight on 2 hours of sleep. When it comes to advice for co-op, it's generally a case of trying to dispel as soon as possible whenever Lilith applies her defense buffs. These are a huge detriment to your DPS if left up for too long, so getting used to your rotation and knowing when to hold or use skills to optimize dispel timings is something you'll need to figure out with your chosen adventurer and shared skill setup. Optimizing for more aggressive play to save time during the water half is particularly impactful, as the addition of sticky spinners in the light half introduces even more mechanics that force downtime. Pushing for as much early damage as possible can be key to avoiding a timeout. This fight feels more like a roster check. You'll want dispellers such as Ieyasu, Muscular and Lapis for the water half, and Ordric, Halloween Laxi or Rashada for the light half, while still being able to employ punishers. Paralysis is particularly bad here as Lilith starts with 90% paralysis resist. You can probably make up for a lack of native dispellers by bringing 2 of the cheaper dispel shared skills such as Lapis and Dragon Your Victor, though Ranzal will work in a pinch. Liberal application of same A shared skill for the addition of a defense down debuff can also help boost DPS. I've received a recommendation for Isaac, as well as had decent speed by pushing strength amps with Ieyasu and Marishiten, so boosting DPS with amps can help meet the strict DPS check in co-op, as well as running Dragon Prep to push for faster Dragon Burst. On a side note, if you're running Summer Ieyasu in your team, the 5-star Bleed Punisher Wemprint is a viable upgrade over the typical filler crit damage prints. Healer-wise, I've typically seen players use Sandalphon and Nurse Aileen for the water half, and Vixel or Hildegard for the light half. Other healers will generally run into affliction resist issues or lack the native healing required to comfortably deal with Lilith's harsh corrosion check, though as always, don't let my recommendations scare you from trying your favourite units in solo. On the water half especially, Sandalphon can be seen as a more offensive pick. Sandalphon can opt to transform and continue to deal damage during mechanics that other adventurers get pushed off from. Her Heavenly Wingspawn's damage reduction allows her to tank a few mechanics so long as there's sufficient regen on the team. Overall, so long as your teams have a decent amount of healing, adequate dispels, and some, but not too many afflictions, you'll be okay. I've seen solo clears using even Luca and Amane, so finesse can be a decent substitute for a lacking roster. If you have further questions, feel free to leave a comment or pop by my Twitch streams. I stream Wednesdays and Saturdays at 9:30 PM UTC. As always, take it easy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.